Hi there, I'm your host McAuley Tucker, and you're listening to The McAuley Tucker Show, the podcast where I sit down with some of the most accomplished and fascinating individuals in the entertainment and business industry. From celebrities to industry leaders, our guests offer unique perspectives and inspiring stories that will educate and inform you. Join me as I sit down with my next guest to cover their humble beginnings, challenges they faced, as well as their accomplishments in life. You are bound to learn something new, so sit back and enjoy the interview. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The McAuley Tucker Show. I'm your host, McAuley Tucker, and today we've got a very special guest, Seth Dusky. If you don't know who Seth Dusky is, he used to be a child actor, a voice actor, and he was involved in commercials and other things like that. One of his biggest projects was the Mars Needs Moms movie. He replaced Seth Green's voice in that film and voiced the main character, Milo. In this interview, we're just talking about what it was like being involved in these Hollywood projects. So sit back and enjoy the interview.
Yeah, I can totally start from the beginning for you. So, I grew up in Southern California. For most of my life, I grew up in Huntington Beach. So, I went to school there, elementary school for the most part. Just normal Southern California life, near LA. But I'd say that around the age of 9, all three of my brothers decided to just take an acting class just for fun. So we went to kind of like a local acting class, and it was cool. We all went there, and we stayed for maybe like a couple weeks, and they let us do monologues, and just kind of taught us just the basics, because none of us had done it before or anything like that. And for this specific acting class, what they did, which was really cool, is they kind of taught you like the basics and stuff like that. And then after, I don't remember how long I was there, but I think maybe after like a couple weeks or like a month of being there, they actually brought out like 2 or 3 agents to the acting class to let us just perform our monologue. So we all did that at the time, and I think they brought out about 3, and all my brothers and everybody in the class did the monologue. And then from there, I think like 2 of the agents reached out to me afterwards. And then I met up with one of them, and I did my monologue again in front of her in LA. And then from there, I just started acting. It's pretty crazy that she started trying to send me. It started out with commercials and stuff like that. So it's crazy how it happened. It didn't really, I didn't really plan on actually pursuing it. But yeah, I just happened to get picked up at that time, which was really, really crazy.
Right. And I saw a lot of information actually about commercials and your involvement in commercials.
Yeah,
Wasn't there maybe even I'm not sure, Hot Wheels commercial in there? I'm not sure, but
definitely.
lots and lots of commercials. I even came across a commercial on YouTube, and funny enough, when I was researching questions and researching stuff, there was like a comment from somebody who was like, "Oh, I went to school with you." Oh, it was like from 11 years ago, and it's just like,
Right.
this is so crazy. And so, like, you stepped into this. Like, was acting something that you would have never saw yourself doing, or was it something that you kind of were interested in at the get-go?
I never grew up thinking like I'm gonna be an actor. I just think it was kind of one of those things where like we thought it'd be cool to take a class and just try it out, and just for fun, just to kind of get in there and just see what it's like and stuff like that. And I think that's at the time, I'm so young, I'm 9 years old, so you're not really thinking about it, but I think that's just like honestly just the reason why you should just do whatever. You should just totally, if you want to do something, you might as well just go for it, because you just never know what's going to happen. But yeah, that's definitely how I started out. After I got that first agent, she just started sending me on commercial auditions. It started out, I'm 9 years old. So it started out with, like you mentioned, actually, I think Hot Wheels was the first commercial I ever did.
Okay.
But yeah, it was, she started sending me on those auditions. And I just kind of took it from there. And it started out with little Hot Wheels commercials, Ben 10 commercials, and I did tons of those when I first started. That's where I really got like really started. Like I did like probably like, I mean, definitely like several commercials, at least like 20 to 30 commercials at the time. So that's really where I started. So it's crazy how it happened. It just kind of like acting class. The next week, she invited us over to her office, and then she picked me up, and then from there it's just like commercial auditions, and that's where I really started, just doing tons of commercials and stuff like that.
That's really crazy to, hear about your start. And what was like some valuable lessons that you learned, even just doing these commercials, because these were kind of your beginning. Like, was there anything that you learned from these experiences that really even impact you to this day?
I mean, just going to these commercials, I mean, auditions in general, you have no clue what to expect, and there's always uncertainty, in everything. And obviously it's super stuff can be uncomfortable, especially if you think, you can't achieve something or just do anything. But like I said earlier, I think it's just, you just got to go for it. You just got to do it. And that's why I think it's super cool you're doing a podcast, because, you start now and you just keep doing it, and you never know what's going to happen. So, yeah, I learned a lot in those auditions. Super totally out of my comfort zone for sure. I mean, every time I went to one of them, it never got easier. I was always so nervous every single time. And it really was, it really was scary, but, yeah, I mean, but there was still success out of it, even out of like all the, uncertainty and me being scared, nervous, super nervous every single time. But I still succeeded on a lot of it. So I think that's just a huge lesson that I didn't notice at the time. But looking back on it, it's like, wow, like, it's still crazy. Like, wow, I actually did that. It's something that you have to like, just look upon years later, and just realize, okay, I could do that, even though it was super, super uncomfortable and kind of scary. So,
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. Even doing my first interview, like whenever I was a young kid, I've always like fell in love with the aspect of like mailing letters and asking questions, just to specifically people who've like done crazy things. And doing my first interview, you're nervous. You're like, oh my word, like I know this person. I grew up watching this person. I, watched their content. You're like, wow. But once you do it, you're like, wow, this is, I'm used to this now. Like you mentioned with your with commercials that you were involved in. You're just like, this
right.
is I'm able to do this. One question I have involving commercials, I've never actually spoken to somebody on my show actually who's been involved in commercials. What sort of things, aside from when you're there, like what do you get the product say for free? If you get what I'm saying, like what's something cool that you're offered when you're in like a commercial, since you've been in so many?
Yeah, no, for sure. That, yes, you do get the product, and as a kid, that was my favorite part. Every time I did a toy commercial, or something in that nature, I did get the product at the end of the commercial. Usually the commercials take about a day to film, sometimes 2 days and stuff like that. But yeah, I did get the product for free every time, and that was my favorite part. And then also wardrobe. They dress you up in wardrobe, and I think they gave you the clothes, every single time too. So I loved that aspect. And, my favorite part as a kid too was the food on set. They always had anything you wanted, food trucks and stuff like that. So I loved going on set and, you know, eating and getting the toy at the end of the day. And it was super fun. But yeah, definitely. We got the free toys every single time.
Yeah, that's like really crazy. I like you just mentioned the food. I've got a good friend of mine who isn't a professional actor or anything by any means, but he was an extra in a Netflix TV show when he was younger. And so he got to experience everything like that, like hanging out with the kids or even like all the food. And he had told me a funny story on the show before about how he took an actual he stole a Warner Brothers mug from the set, and he was just so scared that they were gonna come after him. And
Right.
it dropped off the shelf one day, and he's like, oh, but yeah, just
Right.
going back to what you're saying, it's just so fun to have that experience. And how long exactly, comparable to movies, which we'll talk about later, how long is a typical session like being there and recording? Like, is it long or is it short? Is it short time to record everything?
I'd say it takes longer than you think for sure for a commercial. I mean, the first ones I did, like I said, Hot Wheels, and it's hard to remember all the ones I did at this point, but, just because it was so long ago. But yeah, it takes a lot longer than you think. There's a lot of downtime, and also as a kid too, you're on set and you have to do school too. Like they have to leave some time there for you to do school, and there's teachers on set and stuff like that. So, there's a lot of time between when you get there. As soon as you get there, it's it usually you're eating and then you probably starting school pretty soon. Trying to get that schoolwork done out of the way with the teacher on set.
Mhm.
And then you'll kind of go on there and they'll be fixing up the set a lot and stuff like that for hours. And then you're on the set and there's a lot of standing around. It's kind of hot because the lights are super warm. But yeah, it took a while. I'd say a lot of them took like all day. I mean, it took all day.
Wow.
When you see the commercial, it's like, you know, especially one of the classic toy commercials on Nickelodeon or whatever, where it's like shows you the toy, and then you glances to the kids and stuff like that. You see them for a flash, and then it's over. It takes a lot longer than you think. There's several commercials I can think of. Actually, now that I think about it, do you know what Orbeez are?
Yes.
Yeah, so I actually filmed the first Orbeez commercial. This must have been like 12 years ago at this point, maybe, or something like that. 13 years ago, but I filmed that first commercial. That was on YouTube for the longest time. I don't think it's on there anymore, but that one too took just all day. And like, and then you see the commercial and you see my face flash up a couple times and stuff like that. And, it's mainly just the product. So, but they take a while. They definitely take a lot longer than you think, for sure.
Exactly. I think it's really interesting hearing like what it's like behind the scenes. That's something that I really enjoy hearing, and I think my listeners enjoy hearing too, just kind of breaking down that. And one thing I kind of wanted to hear more about specifically is kind of tracking back school. I've talked with a few people who I guess have done some school during filming, but is this something that's really difficult to do and to do during these filming sessions comparable to actually being in like high school or like an elementary school?
Yeah, so I think for me at least, being a kid, again, I think I was an actor from about the age of 10 or at the end of my 9, so about 10 to 15. And during all those years, I think the hardest part, I mean, was just having to get out of school a lot. So that was the hardest on me, I think, at the time, being a kid. Once you start kind of landing commercials and stuff like that, and your agent sends you on more commercials and just more auditions in general, you have to start getting out of school. And even if you don't land a job, even if it's just an audition to try out for something like that, you're constantly leaving school early. It's, you're getting out of school a couple hours early, and you know the someone's walking to the class like, hey, here's your pass, and I'm leaving school early again. So I think that was really hard, just because I did my work on set, but it's also like you don't learn it as well, just because you're not in class. You're just kind of doing the homework really, on set, and the teacher can kind of help you do the homework and teach you, but you're really not getting the full lesson. And yeah, it was definitely hard, getting out of school a lot. And actually, when I in middle school, when I was about 13, I started homeschooling because of that. So I homeschooled for a couple years. About my seventh grade year and my eighth grade year is when I homeschooled, just because I started going on more and more auditions. And it was really tough just getting out of school all the time and having to make up all the work and stuff like that. So I eventually actually homeschooled because of that. So yeah, it definitely was a little bit more tough, for sure.
I actually do homeschooling, or I guess you could call it online high school, and I find
Right.
it really nice because you're able to do things like these, record interviews and even work on other things. And you're always at home. You see here, I've got all like
Yeah.
my marketing
Yeah.
stuff. I've got like my names of my friends that I reach out to, make sure they're doing okay. But like it's really crazy, to hear, I guess, from your experience, being in that industry and also doing school. And I'm not sure where in the timeline this kind of began, but like, when were you getting calls for like TV shows? I know, looking under your kind of library of things you've been in, gradually I was looking, and there's some TV show work. I'm not sure if it lists everything, but like,
Yeah.
when did this start happening for you? Can you kind of explain what this was like? Getting some calls for shows.
Yeah, I think it honestly happened quicker than quicker than I remember. I mean, after I think like a year of filming like a bunch of commercials, they started sending me on, co-star roles, like, stuff that you can kind of, you're in for an episode, you're in several scenes, but you're in one episode. I started doing a lot of those auditions, and those are definitely a lot tougher to land. There's a lot more competition. Anybody who's um, auditioning for TV shows has probably been doing it for a little bit, for sure. So that's definitely a lot more nerve wracking too, as well, because you get scripts for those, and it's a completely different thing than the commercials. The commercials, you just show up, and you're just you're there, and they'll tell you what to do when you're in the audition there. But when it comes to the TV shows, those were even more scary. It started getting more scary. It's nerve wracking, at least, not scary, but I had to memorize scripts and stuff like that. But I think it happened pretty quick. I think when I was about 11, I actually landed my first TV show, first co-star role, and it was Big Time Rush. So it's season 2, episode 2. I think that's honestly, I mean, out of all the things, like that's what people used to recognize me for all the time when I was younger, even though it was just one episode and I didn't really think people would say anything about it. I think that's one thing, even if I explain the episode to them nowadays, people have actually like seen it, if they're my age. So yeah, that was my first role that I landed. And I think I was 11 years old. So it happened pretty quick, actually.
That's really crazy, and I did actually see some photos of that, and that's like something that I've seen under your kind of catalog of things you've been on, and that must be like a
Right.
really awesome experience, and that'd be like a really great experience for you to have that, even just a part of your childhood too. Like that's just such a really awesome experience. And kind of the things I wanted to talk about, which is kind of the why I wanted to invite you on the show, was to talk about Mars Needs Moms, like this whole film
Right.
that you were involved in. I was watching a lot of videos of it recently. I grew up watching this film. I watched it like maybe 4 or 5 times in my childhood. I personally really enjoyed that film.
That's awesome.
It was a really great movie. I know you probably know
Yep.
how it's been received.
Exactly. Right. Right.
And I guess before we kind of talk about like what's your honest, I don't like getting into kind of like really crazy conversations like this, but what's your thoughts on how it was received? Just out of curiosity.
It just kind of, as a kid, it's not, you don't process it. You know what I'm saying? So you just kind of, you get the role and it happens and you think it's cool and you do it. And, if it's, as a kid, you don't even know the difference if it's received well or not. You kind of just, as time goes on, you're like, oh, okay, that happened. But yeah, I mean, nowadays I think it is what it is and stuff like that. I just think, to me, it's just the experience is the coolest part. Just doing something like that is just cool. Obviously it would be awesome if it was, a huge movie and stuff like that. But it was still just a fun experience and something that's cool to say I did. It's another thing to look back on and be like, oh, I did that and that was super cool and super fun.
Exactly. And that's kind of the thing that if I was in your shoes, I'd take away too, even though it might have not been received well, you got that experience and you were given this opportunity, and you shouldn't, you should be like, oh no, like this was a great opportunity that you were given. And kind of I want to hear kind of your side of how this happened. I know I learned this a while back. It was very confusing for me because I didn't know who exactly voiced the main character.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
many times when actually before I ever started a podcast, I like went on Google, who does the voice of the main character, just out of curiosity. That's something that I've always enjoyed.
Yeah.
Always enjoyed looking at who does actors, who does this. That's kind of how I even get a lot of my interviews. Like it's just so confusing because I know Seth Green was originally, he did the motion capture, and he actually did the voice too. And I actually came across on Google just recently, somebody found the entire Mars Needs Moms just with Seth Green's voice on some sort of Blu-ray.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, but like for you, like how far in production were you reached out about this, and what exactly did your work look like? Was it just simply going in and recording the lines, but was there other things that were involved? Was it a very complicated experience, or was it just, very simple?
Yeah. So fast forward a couple of years, I think I might have been 12 years old at this time. I moved on from my old agent because I was landing a decent amount of commercials. Like I said, that was my forte. I just landed mainly commercials. So I transferred to an agency called CESD Talent Agency, and there they kind of I had multiple agents. I had like a commercial agent, a TV show agent, a movie agent, a print agent. So I had multiple agents there, and that was a bigger agency for sure in LA. So there they had their own recording studios there. So if I ever had any type of voiceover audition, I can just head up there and do it. And I did multiple voiceover auditions there. And I definitely landed a few voiceover roles for smaller stuff. But yeah, Mars Needs Moms was obviously the big one. And It was definitely a complicated process for me too. I went in there. I remember one day, and I remember auditioning for it. The script was in front of me, and I just auditioned for it normally. And I think like a month later, they contacted me, and I think I came out one more time to audition again. And after that, they invited me to the studio, and I didn't know if I landed the job or what happened. But yeah, it's a complicated process. I do believe they filmed the actual whole entire movie with Seth Green, and they obviously had to manipulate his voice to kind of, he's an adult, so they had to manipulate his voice to kind of make it sound childish. And I think they just hated the way it sounded. I think it just sounded weird, and they couldn't go through with the movie with his voice in it. So they wanted an actual kid to voice it. So that's where I stepped in, and that process was a fun process too. That's when I moved into a big studio and stuff like that, and we started doing all that. And this took I mean, it didn't take that long because, like I said, the movie was already filmed. So what I had to do was actually go in for, I think it took a few weeks, and I just kind of went in there day by day. And what I would do is I would go in there and I would start from the beginning of the movie, and it would be like starting with the first scene, and there would be three beeps. It'd be beep, 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 and after that third beep, I would have to start talking on the script and try to match his lips for every single scene. So that's what we did, and I tried to get my voice as close to his lips as I could. And then I think after that, they kind of just edited the movie to make it match perfectly. But that's how it basically went. I had to go through the whole movie, just kind of scene by scene, multiple times, each sentence and stuff like that, and try to match the lips. So it took a few weeks of going there every day, but that's basically how the process worked.
That's very interesting. That must have been stressful at first. Like
it was stressful. That. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was weird. Like I said, I didn't know what was going on either because there was already a voice, on Milo at the time. So it was definitely like a confusing process. But after like a week, I kind of got a hang of it, and it was just a lot. It was a lot of just reading the same thing over and over again, trying to match, the lips and, say it different ways and stuff like that. And, after a few weeks, I was done. And that was really cool too at the time too, because as a kid, I drive through LA looking, for, doing auditions and stuff like that. And, there was Mars Needs Moms posters everywhere because it's a Disney movie. Whether it flops or doesn't flop, they're going to market it as much as they can. So, I mean, it was everywhere in LA and stuff like that. So it was like the coolest thing to do. And I actually ended up doing a red carpet because of it. And that's probably like the scariest thing I have ever done. Like it was just, just kind of did a movie and all of a sudden they're throwing me on the red carpet because of it and stuff like that. So that was a super, nerve-wracking process too after that.
Yeah, that must have been really crazy. And I've talked with a few individuals on my program who have done voice acting. One of my good friends I got to know named Mark Walton, he is a Disney storyboard artist, and he was lucky enough to voice
awesome.
Rhino the hamster in Bolt. You might have seen that film when you were young.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so he got that opportunity, and he did that, and I also spoke with which kind of applies to what you were saying. I spoke with an individual, the director of the B movie. So when they usually do voice acting in film, they have all the voice actors there. And so kind of what you were saying, it was different. It was just you reading over the lines. And was that difficult at times, knowing, hey, I'm not actually like speaking with the person. I'm just,
Yeah, I think that was the weirdest part. I mean, everybody that had been involved with the movie was gone. They were already done. So it was just me, the director, and some other people behind the scenes, just kind of just doing it. And it was just me, like I said, everyone was already done. Seth Green was already out of there. All of them were already gone. So I didn't really get to meet them at the time, which I thought I was going to meet them on set, but I didn't get to. But that's where the red carpet came in. So I got to meet all of them on the red carpet, and that was super cool for me at the time.
Yeah, and the red carpet experience is like really crazy. Mark was telling me about that too. But like for you, I was watching some videos of that. There was like a lot of people there. That would have been like a really crazy experience because you probably saw people that you seen on television, you've seen on movies, and you're just there, and you have to, of course, like somewhat remain in that professional kind of area, and it can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes. To me, at least for me, being in that experience, if I was younger, I'd be like, wow, I want to go to talk to everybody. Like this is just so
Yeah.
crazy. What did you take away from the red carpet experience? Was there anything that, like, can you share kind of the moments you did have with the cast? I'd love to hear about that kind of experience for you.
Yeah, I mean, overwhelming was an understatement at the time. Just kind of getting thrown on the red carpet, like all of a sudden, was definitely overwhelming. But definitely a great process or a great thing to look back on again. But it was cool. I just kind of, you start at the front of the red carpet. And I'm starting to meet people like Seth Green. I mean, there was a lot of big actors there that were just kind of there. Even some people that weren't even fully involved with it, they were there. So I think Mitchell Musso, who was a Disney actor, was there. There was a lot of people there that were there. So I started from the beginning, kind of meeting everyone, and then there's pictures online of me with the different members of the cast and stuff like that, and that part was cool. But the interviews were what really got me. Those interviews are terrible, just because I'm just so like I don't even it's a blur at the time, but I'm just so nervous, and there's literally people interviewing me about the movie, and I'm just trying to just say words without them being a complete blob. But yeah, it was super cool at the time. Finally getting through the red carpet and being able to watch the movie premiere and stuff at the end was just awesome. Looking back on, very very nerve wracking though.
Was this your first time seeing the movie in its entire length, or have you seen it earlier?
That was the first time me seeing the movie the entire length. So yeah, it was the premiere where it kind of, at least it was the first time, me seeing it all in one with my voice. I mean, obviously going through the movie, you see bits and pieces of every scene, not with my voice in it, but it was the first time with my voice in it as well. So it was awesome. It was awesome to watch that. It
That
was really cool.
Exactly. That was like sounds like a really great experience. And kind of like after like Mars Needs Moms, I looked and there was like some other things that you were involved in. Like you did some voice work like on Ice Age, like Alvin and the Chipmunks. Like what kind of like did
Right.
that look like? Like what was your part in these films?
So after Mars Needs Moms, so there's these things you can do which were really fun for me at the time, and I think it was called like an ADR looping group. So it's where you loop your voice in different movies, and those were really fun for me because I wouldn't have to audition for them. It's just kind of one of those things where once you're in like the voice acting world and they kind of find kids that have done this before, they just keep inviting you back, and that's why there's multiple movies where my name are involved in it, because they just kept having me back. But they're called ADR groups, so they would invite like some kids, that they use a lot, that have experience in voice acting and stuff like that. And basically, what we would do is we'd go through movies like Ice Age, like you said, and Alvin and the Chipmunks, and movies like that, and we'd go through the whole movie, and any type of like for Ice Age, for example, any animals that are like not main characters, but just kind of like in there for a scene, or even background animals or anything like that. That's where like my voice would come in and stuff like that. So it wasn't necessarily background, but it wasn't like any main work. It was just kind of like looping groups, and we'd go through the whole movie, and anywhere where it looked like there needed to be sound, like different animals in Ice Age, we'd put our voice in there, and we'd keep going throughout the movie and doing stuff like that. So the same way with Alvin and the Chipmunks, like if they're filming a scene, and there's the two main characters talking, and they're on a cruise ship, and there's kids running around in the background, my voice will come in, and I'll be talking, like just kids running by or stuff like that. So that was really fun for me doing that, because I was in a studio like a lot, and that's why you see so many random movies on IMDb that I'm involved in, because I did all those ADR groups.
Did you watch the film from like beginning to end with like when you went there?
Yeah, yeah, we did. We didn't watch it in obviously one go, but yeah, it was just kind of like the Mars Needs Moms process, except obviously a lot quicker, because Mars Needs Moms I had a script and I was in every single scene. But yeah, these movies like Alvin and the Chipmunks and Ice Age and stuff like that, we went through the whole movie. There'd be a few of us And yeah, we just went through the whole thing. And anytime where it looked like there needed to be some type of talking or background talking, or something that needed a voice in, we would just come in and do that, with no script, just kind of improv the whole time, which was super cool.
That's awesome. And that must be like a cool experience too, because you're able to watch these films that haven't actually been released to the public, but also must be difficult because I know in the world, in that industry, you got to be a professional. You can't talk about these things outside, but like just being there and watching these films, it's like, wow, like this, was there any that at the time, like wow, I love this. This is such a cool film. I can't wait to watch this.
Oh, I mean, tons of them. I mean, as a kid, Ice Age was already huge. Loved Ice Age. Alvin and the Chipmunks, again, huge. I loved Alvin and the Chipmunks. I mean, I did several of those too. It's like it was kind of like the commercials. I can't remember every single one I did, but there was, Crazy Stupid Love. Like there's several that I did, but definitely all those kid movies I just couldn't wait to watch. Like I said, Ice Age, Alvin and the Chipmunks, any of them. I just, after leaving there, I couldn't wait to watch the movie like in full when it came out.
Right. And kind of somewhat wrapping up the film stuff. Like I know a lot of the time when you're working on projects, you get to take away stuff from the film. I remember talking to the kid who did the voice of Andy for the entire Toy Story franchise. And he
That's
told me
awesome.
about all like the memorabilia that he got. For your situation, specifically, I guess for Mars Needs Moms, like what type of stuff were you given anything aside from, like items like memorabilia?
Let's try to think here. I mean, there's just tons of random stuff that I got at the time, like posters and stuff of that nature. I remember actually when I first filmed Mars Needs Moms, that's when I believe the Keurig just came out, which was forever ago. So they gave me a Keurig at the time, which was actually kind of cool because I think at that time, I mean, this was forever ago. I was 12 years old. So I think at that time, most people were just kind of making their coffee the normal way, just ground it up and stuff like that. But now Keurigs are just like absolutely huge. So we got one of those, which was super cool. I think I got like maybe like a Mars Needs Moms bobblehead that's somewhere. Yeah, I got some cool stuff to keep during that too. But Mars Needs Moms was, a little different process. Obviously it was a lot quicker, so I didn't get tons of things, but I definitely got little things like that, which was pretty cool.
It's really awesome to hear about all the memories and the experience you had with all these films. And what I'm not sure from like what I've seen, what exactly are you doing now? It looks like you've stepped away from the acting stuff, from my understanding at least. But can you kind of explain like what happened after all this played out? Like what was the last project you were on, and what kind of happened, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. Yeah, towards the end, I think towards the end of it, I think I was about 15 years old. I was still doing tons of commercials and stuff like that. I think the last couple commercials I filmed like a Coca-Cola, Walmart commercial, which were bigger commercials because there's non-union commercials that you can film where they just give you a paycheck, and then there's the union you can join, SAG-AFTRA. So I think after I did Big Time Rush is when I joined the SAG union. And then that way it was easier for me to do bigger commercials like Coca-Cola for bigger companies, which at the time was cool because you get residuals on those. So they can give you a check, and then every time it plays, they'll keep paying you, which was super cool. So I did bigger commercials like that. I think I did another co-star role. Actually, it was for a show called Wendell and Vinny. It was supposed to be a Nick at Night show back then. And it only ran for one season. The main character, I can't think of his name right now. I'm having a brain fart, but it was the brother in iCarly. So he was one of the main characters, and it was a show that was kind of starting to come to light called Wendell and Vinny. But I don't think it went for a season, but I'm not sure if it went for more than a season because it was a Nick at Night show, and I just don't think it got picked up well. But I did a co-star role there as like some type of bully at school. So I was in a few scenes there, just did, little TV shows like that. And I was doing a lot of voiceover work at the time still. And then at that time, I mean, all throughout this, I was moving a lot. So I moved to Huntington Beach from another city in Southern California when I was like 4. And then I lived from Huntington Beach from anywhere from like 5 to 10 And then I moved to Temecula, which is another city in California. And California is a big city. I mean, it's not like small cities where it's like, oh, you're still in the same state. You know, you could do this and that. It's like California is huge. It really is. So when I moved to Temecula, I was a couple hours away. And I did that that's actually when I was seventh grade. So I still did acting there. It got a little bit harder again because I'm farther from LA now. So I was like an hour and a half away, and that slowly but surely kind of made it harder. So my dad got a job in Temecula, and that's why we had to move there. But it slowly got kind of harder because I was an hour and a half away from these auditions. And on the way back, it would take a couple hours to get back because the traffic is absolutely terrible in LA. And it got super hard. It got to the point where it was like when I got an audition, I was like, it's such a long process, and I'm leaving school again, and I'm doing this over, and it's so far. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so before it was like, 30 minutes to LA, which is doable. But then as a kid, when it's an hour and a half, 2 hours away every audition, and you're doing multiple auditions a week, it got super hard. And that's when I started homeschooling. And then when I was about 15, we moved back to another city called Fullerton in California, which is a lot closer again. So it got easier for a while because my dad at the time, he was moving jobs, and that's why we kept moving. And then eventually he got a job in Missouri, which is where I currently live now. And I've been living ever since. And when we moved to Missouri, the acting scene's obviously not the same here. We're not in California anymore. We're in Missouri. So it's a completely different process. I slowly did voiceover auditions while I was here. So I set up my own like kind of small studio where I put like, I had like a box, and then I set up like some soundproof foam in there and put my microphone in there and stuff like that. And that's how I did auditions from home for a while in Missouri. And I think I did a couple more small voiceover roles while I was here, but it just, as a kid, it was getting harder and harder, and now it's great to look back on, but as a kid, it's like when you're doing a lot of acting and stuff like that, it's a lot of auditioning. It's just a lot of your time. It's hard to be a normal. It feels like you're not a normal kid at the time, even if you're not a huge actor by any means, even if you're just a regular actor like me. You're still doing a lot of auditions and tons of stuff to where it's like it takes away a lot from your actual like kid life. So by the time I moved to Missouri, I was kind of phasing out of it a little bit, at least for the time. I just wanted to, I was in Missouri at this point. So it was kind of like one of those things where it was like, I guess if I am phasing out right now, or at least seeing what it's like to phase out, this would be the time, because I can't really audition for bigger things anymore because I don't live in LA. And then from there, I kind of just, I went to high school for the first time because so when I did homeschool, I think I said seventh and eighth grade earlier. It was actually eighth grade is when I started, and I did a little bit in my freshman year of high school too. So, and when I moved to Missouri, it was my sophomore year. So I went to high school for the first time, met tons of people, and, was just kind of like, it was a whole different experience to me at the time. And I just kind of phased out of it a little bit. And I haven't done much acting since. I always think about, going back would be really cool. Now that I'm older, it's like, oh, it was really cool doing that. And like, now that I have a job and stuff like that, now it's more like, oh, wow, we got to do work anyway, so why not act, but yeah, it's a huge commitment though. I would have to move back to California, and Southern California is very, very expensive. And if I were to be an actor, I would want to give it my all. So, I'd have to be able to afford a place to live there and give it my all and stuff like that. So I've definitely thought about it. It sounds awesome, but I have not. I think I slowly phased out of it when I was 15 though.
Yeah, you said a lot of really amazing things there. I think it's really great that you were given that opportunity to, go to high school and experience that. And I mean, I didn't ask this like earlier on, but what was some of your friends' reactions like when they heard about like even your commercials and everything you've done? Like, what was it like? Like, was it a different experience for you? Were you surrounded by a lot of people? Were people always talking about it? Was it ever something that you're kind of exhausted and tired of?
Absolutely. Yes. As a kid, when you're going to school and stuff like that, there's not too many actors in the school, there's not too many people that are in that commercial or on Big Time Rush and stuff like that. So, a lot of people, constantly talk to you about it, constantly, are watching it and, just constantly bringing it up. So yeah, every single time, no matter what school I went to, even in high school when I was kind of phasing out of it, I mean, everybody finds out, the whole school finds out, eventually. So yeah, they definitely, some extra attention there for sure.
Yeah, really hopefully you're able to kind of have peace and kind of have this, where we're living your life and you're in high school, but kind of wrapping up, like, out of everything that you've done, what's one thing that you've learned through everything you've done? And also with this question, what is something that you would like to pass on to any number of the listeners listening to this point? That's kind of the question I always ask my guests, to sort of kind of leave them with something.
Yeah, no, like I said earlier, I already mentioned it once or twice earlier, but I'm older now. It's one of those things where I can sit back and kind of look at what I did now instead of just being in the moment. And like I said, if it sounds completely basic, but if you ever want to do something, I really think you should just do it, because it's 100% possible. And if you think, if you like something, I think you should you should give it a shot, and you should give it your all, because if you give anything your all, I think you're bound to succeed. So I think if I could tell anyone that, that's what I would say.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Seth, for coming on the show. I'll be sure to include a link to some of the stuff that you've been involved with, so people can kind of check out and see all those amazing things. And thank you again for coming on.